in a world where influence shapes opportunity. One question quietly determines your path. Are you being seen, or are you being overlooked? It's not always about talent, not always about intelligence. Sometimes it's about how you're perceived, especially by people who hold power. Being invisible to powerful people isn't just a matter of chance. Often, it's the result of habits so subtle, so deeply ingrained, you don't even realize they're holding you back. Machiavelli, the Renaissance philosopher known for his ruthless clarity on politics and power, understood human nature better than most. His writings, especially The Prince, dissect how influence works, and more importantly, how it's lost. According to Machiavellian thinking, power isn't something granted. It's something you must strategically attract, and just as easily something you can unintentionally repel. In this video, we'll explore 13 habits that quietly make you invisible to powerful people. Not disliked, not opposed, just unseen, forgotten, bypassed. Why playing it safe with your opinions makes you forgettable. Why emotional neediness repels attention. Why lacking boundaries invites disrespect. You'll hear real-world examples of how these habits play out in boardrooms, creative industries, politics, and even everyday social groups. And how constantly seeking approval, even with good intentions, makes you fade from the view of people who could help you grow. Why does this matter? Truths that many ignore, but that the powerful instinctively understand. It's about strategy, the kind Machiavelli wrote about centuries ago, and that still applies in today's world of leadership, networking, and influence. It asks about positioning yourself in such a way that people in power can help but recognize your value. Because in any room where decisions are made, visibility is power. The person who gets chosen, promoted, trusted, is rarely the most qualified. And it all starts with something that sounds innocent, always trying to be liked. You'll begin to speak differently, move differently, show up with more clarity, confidence, and command. You'll stop dimming your own light for the comfort of others. And most importantly, you'll stop making yourself invisible to the very people who could help change your life. You stay quiet to be polite. You stay humble to avoid arrogance. You avoid risk to stay safe. And slowly, without realizing it, you vanish. It asks the one who knows how to stand out in the eyes of those who hold the keys. But here is the irony. The habits that make you invisible are usually done with good intentions. You will see how small behaviors send big messages, and how those messages affect how you retreated, remembered, or completely ignored. This is not a lesson in manipulation. It's not about playing games. In the next several minutes, we'll break down these 13 habits, one by one. We'll examine why apologizing too much can signal weakness. We'll also dive into subtle mistakes, being too agreeable, avoiding conflict, failing to self-promote, and lacking a defined identity. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about removing the habits that are dimming your presence, often without your consent. Throughout the series, we'll also bring in Machiavellian insights, timeless, sharp, sometimes uncomfortable truths that shine light on why the world works the way it does. If you've ever walked away from a meeting feeling like no one noticed your input, or been in a room where you knew you had value but couldn't seem to break through, this is for you. Because visibility isn't just about being loud or flashy. Once you become aware of these invisible habits, everything changes. So let's begin. Let's examine the first of the 13 habits, a common, often praised trait that quietly erodes your presence in powerful circles. Trying to be liked, it sounds harmless, even admirable. After all, who doesn't want to be pleasant, agreeable, and easy to get along with? But here's where Machiavellian thinking flips that idea on its head. When your main focus is being liked, you give up control. You hand over your power to the opinions of others, and powerful people. They sense that instantly. The need to be liked makes you soft around the edges. You hesitate to speak boldly even when you have something valuable to say. You nod when you disagree. You downplay your achievements to avoid looking arrogant. In your effort to fit in, you erase the very things that make you stand out. People in power aren't drawn to people who just agree. They're drawn to those who carry certainty. People who have a spine, a clear perspective, a sense of internal validation. When you shape yourself to win approval, you become slippery, unremarkable, safe, and safe is forgettable. It starts subtly. You avoid saying something controversial in a meeting. You hold back criticism, even when it's constructive. You water down your opinions so they won't ruffle feathers. Over time, your voice gets quieter, your presence shrinks, people don't remember what you said, or that you were even there. Here's the Machiavellian truth. Being respected matters more than being liked. Respect commands attention. It sets boundaries. It defines you as someone who stands for something, even if others disagree. And the paradox is, once you stop trying so hard to be liked, people often end up liking you more, because they can trust that what you say is real. So how do you break this habit? First, notice when you're filtering yourself. Ask, am I holding back because it is wise, or because I am afraid of how I'll be perceived? The difference is everything. Second, practice disagreeing without apology. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to argue. But you do need to be willing to say, actually, I see it differently. Those 7 words alone can make you stand out more than an hour of agreeable small talk. Third, stop softening your wins. When you've done something well, say it plainly. Confidence is not arrogance, unless you're trying to prove it. Quiet strength is far more magnetic than noisy insecurity. Powerful people don't want another echo. They want clarity. They want someone who can bring value, not just nod in agreement. When you stop chasing approval, you open the door for real respect, real influence, and real presence. This habit, the need to be liked, is just the beginning. It's the first crack in a foundation that can either elevate or erase your visibility. But once you see it, you can begin to shift it. And in that shift, you start becoming someone who commands attention, not someone who waits for permission to be noticed. Now let us look at the next habit that works against you. Something often mistaken for a humility, but that actually pushes powerful people away. The habit of constantly apologizing, not for mistakes, but for existing, for speaking, for taking up space. Apologizing too much might seem like a harmless habit, even a polite one. But when done excessively, it sends a message that is louder than your words. I don't believe I belong here. And that message is picked up instantly by powerful people. There's a difference between owning a mistake and constantly shrinking yourself. One builds trust, the other erodes presence. Apologizing unnecessarily doesn't make you humble. It makes you appear uncertain, overly self-critical, and is oddly dismissible. It starts with small phrases. Sorry, just one quick question. Sorry if this sounds dumb. Sorry to interrupt. But each time you begin with an apology when none is needed, you're subconsciously signaling that your words are a disruption, that your presence requires permission. You're lowering your status before you've even said anything of value. Powerful people don't respond to apologies. They respond to clarity, to calm confidence, to people who speak like they have every right to be in the room. This doesn't mean you should become arrogant or insensitive. Real confidence is quiet. It's grounded. It shows up in statements like, I have a suggestion. Here's what I noticed. I'd like to add something. Notice how none of these require an apology. They're simple, clear, and direct. They assume value. Think about it. Would you respect a doctor who starts every sentence with sorry? Or a pilot who nervously says, sorry, I hope this flight goes okay? No, because authority isn't just about knowledge. It's about presence. And presence begins with language. Machiavelli understood that power isn't always taken. Sometimes it's given away. Every unnecessary apology is a tiny surrender, one that adds up over time until you've made yourself invisible. Not by accident, but by habit. To break this pattern, become aware of when and why you're apologizing. Is it because you genuinely made a mistake, or is it a reflex? Something you say to soften your impact, to preempt rejection, to make others more comfortable. Here's a practical exercise. For one full day, replace every unnecessary sorry with thank you. Instead of sorry I'm late, say thank you for waiting. Instead of sorry for asking, say thank you for explaining. It shifts the tone entirely. From shrinking to grounded, this single habit change can alter how you're perceived in meetings, interviews, conversations, even casual interactions. When you stop apologizing for your existence, powerful people start to take you more seriously. You're no longer the person who tiptoes around their own ideas. You become the person who stands behind what they say. And here's what's powerful. The less you apologize, the more impact your real apologies carry. When you do make a mistake and say, I'm sorry, it lands with weight, because it's not routine, it's meaningful. Invisibility doesn't come from being silent. It comes from constantly undermining your own voice. Apologizing too much is just another way of saying, don't see me. But once you recognize it, you can stop it, and your voice, your presence, your ideas, they start to rise. Now let's move into another habit that erodes your visibility. One that looks like supportiveness, but often turns into overagreeing is one of those habits that feels safe. You nod, you smile, you say absolutely. Oh, that's a great point. Even when you're not fully convinced, it feels cooperative, it feels polite. But over time, it does something subtle but damaging. It erases your identity. When you agree with everyone all the time, what do you stand for? What do you challenge? What do you bring that's unique? You don't want to cause friction. You don't want to look difficult. You want to be seen as a team player, and that's understandable. But when agreement becomes your default setting, you become unmemorable. Easy to overlook, easy to ignore, easy to forget. Powerful people aren't looking for followers who echo everything they say. They're looking for people who can offer sharp insight, respectful challenge, and original thought. The person in charge hears the same thing from every direction, until one voice says, actually, I see it a little differently. And clarity only comes when people are willing to express honest, even opposing views. That's the voice they remember. That's the voice they start to watch. Someone who brings a fresh lens. Someone who's not afraid to see things differently. That's how trust is built. Not by mirroring everything, but by offering something useful that no one else sees. The instinct to agree with everyone often comes from a desire to avoid conflict, or because you want to stay on someone's good side. If it's the latter, pause. but being thoughtful, selective, and honest in when you agree. That's power. Let your opinion come from clarity, not fear. People who constantly agree fade into the background because they don't bring contrast, and contrast is what gets noticed. It is about showing you not afraid to think for yourself, and that your thoughts carry weight. Think of a room full of yes. What happens? You don't need to convince everyone. You just need to show that your perspective is real, that it comes from thought and not fear. Just because someone makes a statement doesn't mean you have to instantly validate it. People start to notice your mind, your values, your clarity, and that's when influence begins to grow. Not from volume, but from distinction. It's the habit of always being available, always saying yes, always putting others first at the cost of your own space. I wonder how it plays out in a different context. You can respond with curiosity instead of agreement. Say things like, Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince seeks advisors who will tell him the truth, even when it's hard, because power needs clarity. So how do you stop over? Start by giving yourself permission to pause. That's an interesting take. Here's another angle I've been thinking about, or even simply, what if we looked at it from this perspective? These phrases still build rapport, but they also mark your contribution as thoughtful and distinct. You're not just reacting, you're adding. Second, notice when you're agreeing out of habit. Are you nodding because you truly agree? You don't need to disagree with everything. That's not strength. That is a whose contraria noise. There's something magnetic about someone who's willing to calmly hold their own view, even when it's not the popular one. When you stop over-agreeing, you stop blending in. Being visible to power isn't about dominating the room. Next, we'll explore a habit that seems helpful, even generous. But over time, it becomes draining and damaging to your visibility. Being too available seems like a virtue. You say yes when asked. You show up early, stay late, reply quickly, help others with their problems. All in the name of being reliable, supportive, and kind. If you're always around, always agreeable, always there without limits, you stop being seen as a person of strategic worth and start being viewed as a tool. Useful, but replaceable. But when taken too far, this habit quietly teaches people to take you for granted, who will protect their time, their focus, and their energy. You become overexposed. People start assuming you'll always be available, and they stop appreciating the times you show up. Because those people signal something crucial, they understand their own value. Machiavelli would tell you, the more familiar and accessible something becomes, the less it's valued. Scarcity creates respect. Powerful people are not drawn to the ones who are always eager to please. They're drawn to those who have boundaries, who know when to say no. When you constantly say yes to every request, you dilute your presence. Think about the person who only speaks when they have something essential to say. When they raise their voice, people lean in. Now think about the person who talks constantly. No matter how smart they are, their words start to fade into background noise. Don't explain every no. Say it firmly, kindly, and move on. You don't need permission to have limits. The same principle applies to your time and your attention. You don't need to reply instantly to everything. That space gives the message. You are thoughtful, not reactive. Deliberate, not desperate. It means becoming intentional. Here's what this habit often looks like in daily life. When you do commit, people know it's real, and they value it more deeply. They say, I know what matters, and I won't be pulled in every direction. You say yes to tasks outside your role just to avoid seeming unhelpful. You reply to emails or messages immediately, even late at night. If you're always saying yes, your presence loses weight. Let's unpack why that habit might feel safe, but can cost you everything. But when you create thoughtful space, you allow people to truly see you, not just as a helper, but as a force. You never take time off or protect your own calendar. You're telling others, my time is less valuable than yours. That's a message the powerful hear clearly, and they respond by assigning you less value, not more. You over-explain when you say no, hoping to be forgiven for setting limits. On the surface, this looks like loyalty, but underneath it's breaking this habit doesn't mean becoming selfish. Start by protecting your time. Block out hours for deep work or quiet thinking. Be strategic with meetings. Next, delay your responses sometimes. And most importantly, start saying yes only to things that align with your purpose, your values, or your strategic goals. Let your availability mean something. Powerful people respect those who respect themselves. Boundaries are not barriers, they're signals. There's also a hidden benefit. When you stop saying yes to everything, your yes becomes more powerful. If you're always accessible, you're rarely admired. And this brings us to our final invisible habit, hiding your ambition. Playing small so you don't seem arrogant. Downplaying your goals so others feel more comfortable. Hiding your ambition might feel like humility, but often it's just fear in disguise. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of outshining others. So you keep your goals quiet, you minimize your dreams, you downplay your hunger. You tell yourself you don't want to seem arrogant, or too eager, or too much. But in doing so, You make yourself invisible to exactly the kind of people who could help you rise. Machiavelli understood that ambition, when wisely directed, is not something to hide, it's something to use. In his world, rulers respected those who had vision. Power recognizes power. And when you bury your ambition, you deny others the chance to see what you're truly capable of. The mistake isn't in being ambitious, it's in pretending you're not. You might recognize this habit in phrases like, "I'm just happy to help, nothing big. I don't really have a plan, I'm just seeing where things go." Or even, "I'm not trying to lead or anything, I just like being part of the team." These sound safe, modest, acceptable, but they also send a signal. I'm not aiming high. I'm not a contender. I'm not someone to bet on. Powerful people aren't threatened by ambition. They're drawn to it. It reminds them of their own drive. They want to back people with vision, people who want something, who are going somewhere, who are clear about their purpose and unafraid to say it. Ambition doesn't mean stepping on others. It means stepping into yourself, fully, unapologetically, and with direction. So how do you start showing your ambition without sounding arrogant? You begin by owning your goals out loud. Say things like, "I am working toward a leadership role in the next few years. My aim is to build something lasting in this space. I'm focused on becoming a top expert in this field." These aren't boastful. They're grounded. They give people a reason to remember you, to take interest, to align you with future opportunities. It also means being visible in your progress. Don't hide your wins. Share them without shrinking. Document your efforts. Talk about what you're learning, what you're building, what you're aiming for. When done with authenticity, this doesn't alienate people, it draws them in. And finally, be around other ambitious people. Nothing accelerates growth like proximity to others who are reaching, risking, moving forward. That energy is contagious. And in those spaces, your ambition is not too much. It's the baseline. Ambition is not the enemy. Pretending you don't have any is, because when you hide your drive, you hide your fire. And without that fire, powerful people look past you. Not because they dislike you, but because you've given them no reason to look closer. These 6 habits: trying too hard to be liked, apologizing constantly, overagreeing, being too available, and hiding your ambition, are subtle but powerful. They don't shout, they whisper. And over time, they shape how others perceive you and how much influence you carry. Now that you've seen these patterns, the power is in your hands. Visibility isn't about performing louder. It's about living truer, about knowing your worth, holding your space, and letting the world adjust to the version of you that no longer hides. So ask yourself, which habit are you ready to release? And more importantly, what might happen if you finally let yourself be fully seen? Let that be your challenge. Let that be your shift. Because the moment you stop making yourself small is the moment people start paying attention.